Standing in the middle of a modern living room on a Tuesday evening can often feel like standing in a warehouse of deferred decisions. You look around and see the corner where the exercise equipment sits unused. The bookshelf crowded with titles you fully intended to read but never started, and the kitchen drawers overflowing with gadgets that promise to save time but only seem to take up space. This is the quiet reality for millions of middle-income households across America. It is a state of being surrounded by the physical evidence of past optimism. We are a demographic that has largely solved the problem of basic scarcity, yet we have replaced it with the heavy burden of abundance. The buy-nothing rebellion is not a trend or a temporary challenge, but a logical response to the realization that our possessions have begun to own us more than we own them. There is a deeply ingrained belief in our culture that a more efficient life can be purchased. We are told through constant messaging that the right container will fix our organization, the right software will fix our productivity, and the right wardrobe will fix our self-image. This belief is incredibly sticky because it offers a shortcut. It is much easier to buy a new set of running shoes than it is to build a habit of running. The act of purchasing provides an immediate hit of dopamine and a sense of progress, even if nothing in our behavior has changed. We must methodically dismantle the illusion that tools create results. A tool is a force multiplier. But if the force, the human effort and time is not there, the multiplier is zero. In many cases, adding a tool to a life that is already overextended actually creates a negative result because that tool now requires storage and cleaning. It demands maintenance and takes up valuable mental space in our daily lives. When we talk about money in a middle-income context, we must discuss budget architecture. Money is a structured resource governed by the harsh reality of constant trade-offs. For a family earning $80,000 a year, the margin for error is thin. The actual flexibility is often much thinner than the gross numbers would suggest. After federal and state taxes, health insurance premiums, and retirement contributions, that $80,000 might look more like $55,000 in spendable income. When you subtract the fixed costs of a mortgage, car payments, utilities, and groceries, the discretionary income, the money you actually have control over is a relatively small slice. Every time a non-essential item is purchased, it is being carved out of that slice. We often focus on the price tag, but the real cost is the order of operations. If a household has $15,000 in credit card debt at a 22% interest rate, every $50 target run is actually a mathematical setback. That $50, if applied to the debt, would save a significant amount in future interest. By spending it on a household decorative item or a new kitchen tool, the household is choosing a temporary aesthetic lift over a permanent structural improvement. Effort and hard work cannot override the math of compound interest or the reality of fixed costs. Consider the trajectory of a typical 5-year period in your financial life. If a household decides to stop all non-essential spending, a true buy-nothing rebellion, the numerical impact is staggering when viewed in aggregate. If that household previously spent $500 a month on non-essentials, the streaming services, the fast food, the home decor, the upgraded electronics, they are looking at $6,000 a year. Over 5 years, that is $30,000. In many parts of the country, $30,000 is a down payment on a home, or the difference between a child graduating college with debt or without it. We often think of these small purchases as harmless because they fit within the monthly cash flow, but they are actually the slow leak that prevents the tank from ever getting full. The rebellion is about plugging that leak so that the pressure of the system can finally build. This is not about deprivation. It is about the sober recognition that we cannot have everything. So, we must choose the things that actually provide stability. Most people find that their spending is not driven by a lack of intelligence, but by a lack of bandwidth. We buy things when we are tired, when we are stressed, or when we feel a lack of control in other areas of our lives. A purchase is a small, controlled event in a world that feels increasingly uncontrollable. The strategy of refusing to buy anything new must be adapted to your specific stage of life.
For a young professional in their 20s, this rebellion is often about establishing a baseline of security and avoiding the debt traps that characterize early adulthood.
For those in their 40s, the rebellion is usually about reclaiming space and reducing the complexity of a household that has spent 2 decades accumulating. It is important to normalize the idea that some financial strategies do not work for everyone at the same time. A single parent working multiple jobs may not have the time to mend clothes or research the most cost-effective way to repair an appliance. They may have to buy new out of sheer necessity for time. Usefulness depends on your stage, not your smarts. However, for the majority of middle-income earners, the primary obstacle is boundaries. We have been conditioned to believe that more is always better, but in a closed system like a human life, more leads to clutter, and clutter eventually leads to a state of total mental paralysis. When we look at behavioral patterns, people often behave irrationally under pressure. We see households with 3 vacuum cleaners and 5 ways to make coffee, and closets full of clothes with the price tag still on them. This is not because people are foolish. It is because they are seeking relief. The market is very good at identifying our pain points and offering a product as the solution. If you feel lonely, there is a social app or hobby. If you feel inadequate, there is a luxury brand to signal status. If you feel overwhelmed, there is an organizational system to purchase. The buy nothing rebellion is the act of stepping outside of this cycle and acknowledging that the relief offered by these products is always temporary. The only permanent relief comes from understanding the structure of your life and moving within its limits, requiring a level of adult reflection. Consumer culture often discourages reflection, thriving instead on impulse and emotion. To sustain a rebellion against consumption, one must look at second-order effects. When you stop buying, you stop the inflow of items into your home. This eventually changes the way you interact with your living space. You start to notice what you actually use versus what takes up space. You begin to value the items you have more because they are no longer being crowded out by the constant influx of the new and the shiny. This leads to a scenario. What if we treated our current possessions as final? If you knew you could never buy another piece of furniture, how would you treat the sofa you have today? This shift changes how we see things. If you knew you could never buy another pair of shoes, how carefully would you clean and store the ones currently sitting in your closet right now? This shift in perspective moves us from a mindset of disposal to stewardship. Stewardship is a calm, measured approach to life that values longevity over novelty. It is a quiet form of resistance against a world that wants us to be constantly dissatisfied with everything we currently own. The practical reality of this lifestyle is that it is often boring. It involves saying no to social invitations that revolve around spending. It involves spending a Saturday afternoon cleaning a filter instead of browsing a store. It involves the social friction of explaining to friends or family why you aren't participating in the latest consumption trend. But the reward for this boredom is a profound sense of clarity. When the noise of the marketplace is turned down, you can finally hear the actual needs of your household. You can see the path toward retirement, the path toward a paid-off mortgage, and the path toward a life that is not dictated by the next paycheck. This is a probabilistic approach to wealth. It doesn't guarantee a specific outcome, but it significantly increases the probability of a stable and peaceful future. We are choosing the slow, structured build over the fast, chaotic churn. As this rebellion takes root, you will encounter the internal bargaining agent. This is the voice telling you that one small purchase won't hurt, or that this specific item is an investment in your future self. It is important to meet this voice with firm, non-shaming logic. Acknowledge the desire is real, but recognize it is usually a symptom. It could be fatigue, boredom, or a need for a change of pace. By refusing to buy, you deal with the cause instead of a transaction. This is how behavioral patterns actually change in the real world. It is not through inspiration or willpower, but through consistent rules. These rules remove the option of taking the easy way out. Over time, the impulse to buy things begins to weaken significantly. Meanwhile, the appreciation for what is already present starts to grow. We must recognize we operate in a specific U.S. consumer context. Here, consumption is tied to our sense of citizenship and belonging. Our economy assumes we will buy things we do not need. We use money we don't have to impress people we dislike. Stepping out of this is a radical act of self-preservation. It is an admission that the standard American path of lifestyle creep, where every raise in income is met with a corresponding raise in expenses, is a treadmill that leads nowhere. By choosing to stop, you are stepping off the treadmill and choosing to walk on solid ground. This is the difference between a life lived in a state of constant urgency and a life lived in a state of settled intent. The rebellion is the realization that we already have enough, and that enough is a place of immense power and freedom. If the goal is to reach a state of financial peace, we have to accept that the road there is paved with things we didn't buy. It is paved with the older car that still runs perfectly well, the kitchen that hasn't been renovated to match current trends, and the wardrobe that is functional rather than fashionable. These are not signs of failure. They are markers of mastery. This mastery provides protection against the inevitable shocks of life, the job loss, the medical emergency, or the economic downturn. When your life is not cluttered with payments for things you don't use, you have the flexibility to navigate challenges that would break a more leveraged household. This is the sober adult reality of the buy-nothing rebellion. It is the understanding that true wealth is not the ability to buy more, but the ability to need less as you move through this practice. You will find that the physical space in your home begins to open up. The mental space in your head begins to open up as well. You are no longer tracking the shipping status of a package or researching the best price for an upgrade. You are simply living in the space you have, with the tools you have, and the people you care about. This is a return to a more human scale of existence. It is a rejection of the idea that we are merely consumers and an assertion that we are creators, maintainers, and stewards of our own lives. The rebellion is not a loud protest, but a quiet, persistent refusal to be distracted by the trivial. It is the practice of looking at everything the world has to offer and saying, with total clarity, that it is not needed. The structural flow of this change requires a constant checking of one's own motivations. It is easy to turn a buy-nothing rebellion into another form of performance, to brag about how little we spend or how long we have gone without a purchase. But that is just another way of seeking external validation. The true rebellion is internal and invisible. It is the quiet conversation you have with yourself in a store aisle, when you put an item back on the shelf and walk away feeling lighter. It is the realization that your value is entirely independent of your possessions. This is the lesson that a consumer culture cannot teach us, because if we truly learned it, the entire system of constant growth would falter. We are choosing a different kind of growth, one that happens internally and manifests as stability and peace. When we consider the long-term effects of this lifestyle, we see a household that is increasingly resilient. By decoupling our happiness from our spending, we become less vulnerable to fluctuations of the market and the pressures of social comparison. We find that the most valuable things in life, time, relationships, and purpose, cannot be bought and do not require storage space. They only require our presence and our attention. The buy-nothing rebellion is the process of clearing away the debris of consumption so that these things can finally take center stage. It is a slow, methodical reclaiming of our lives from the forces that would have us spend them one small transaction at a time. This transition requires us to normalize the concept of delay. In a world of instant gratification, waiting is a lost art, but waiting is where the true clarity of mind happens. By imposing a mandatory waiting period on any potential purchase, we allow the emotional heat of the impulse to cool down. After 48 hours, or a week, or even a month, the must-have item has completely lost its initial luster. We realize that we were chasing a feeling, not a product. This practice of delay is a vital tool in the disassembly of consumerist beliefs. It proves to us over and over again that we can survive and thrive. We can live without the things we once thought we absolutely needed. It reinforces the idea of progress by sequence rather than by speed. We are moving toward a goal, and every choice not to buy helps. Every time we resist, we are taking a step closer to that goal. Finally, we must understand that this rebellion is a lifelong practice. There is no finish line where you are suddenly immune to new desires. The world will continue to innovate and market and persuade us. The rebellion is the daily decision to remain grounded in your own reality. It is the daily choice to respect and live within your own limits. It is the ongoing commitment to choose the order of operations, choosing the plan over the sudden impulse of the moment. It is a quiet, steady way of being that values long-term health, prioritizing the household over the short-term thrill of the new. By refusing to buy anymore, we are not losing anything of value. We are gaining the most valuable thing of all, ownership of our time. And finally, we are securing the safety of our own future.